All right, everybody, welcome back to Off the Grid on the Record, where we talk with people driving the renewable revolution and not just the ones watching from the sidelines. So today's guest is a big one. Today is Shawn Young, founder and president of Energy Hedge Group. So, I mean, what started in 2008 as a solar initiative has grown into a multi-pronged, almost international energy firm offering solutions across solar, hydrogen, syngas, plasma, battery storage, and EV infrastructure, all focused on ROI and client-driven energy strategy. So we're going to talk about how Energy Hedge evolved to beyond solar, what happens when federal incentives shrink, why walking onto construction sites still works in the digital world, and the industries that are feeling energy cost pressure the most today. So, Shawn, a pleasure to have you here. How you doing today?
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. It's good to be here.
No, I think we have a lot of cool things to dive into, and I'm really excited to hear about, your story, where everything started. I mean, you're not a solar company, you're an energy company. Like, where did all that start?
I mean, it was a long time ago, man. I was I would say I was taking a break during the 2008, 2009 financial crisis where I was really looking for something new to do. And my good buddy I grew up with is a pretty successful electrician in Northern California. And I was talking to him saying, look, I wanted something else to do with my career. I'm not happy being in finance and I want something else. And he was saying, look, you come from a blue collar family. You're a long line of blue collar workers, construction workers, yet you're the first generation being educated in your family. You should really look into solar. And I said, what is solar? And he explained a little bit to me what it was, and I did a whole lot of research on the internet. And I put myself through a very small school in Northern California called the Solar Living Institute, where you take a bunch of seminars during a week. And I learned as much as I can about the solar industry. And I sent my resume around, and I was able to be hired by a local family owned firm in the San Fernando Valley in the LA area. And they had me working a commission only job for a few years on helping them on their residential and small commercial sales. And it took
Mhm.
me 6 months to get my first sale. I was horrible at it,
Wow.
but I kept going. I kept pounding. I kept going. I didn't give up. I started working till midnight every night, and I got my first sale. And then I never looked back. I caught fire. This was back in the day when you had to explain to people what a solar panel was.
Fair enough. That must have been even tougher.
Yeah, it was tough. But, I got through it and I watched the industry grow at the same time. And I was later hired on by an amazing organization called Sidcor to be able to start their solar campaign from a sales point of view. And we started off with roughly 4 reps in a small office in the LA area. And we probably sold 20 deals our first month. And 2 years, 3 years later, we had 5 offices from Sacramento to San Diego with
Wow.
roughly 60 reps selling 200 residential projects a month.
That's fantastic. So you guys scaled like pretty quickly then. I mean, I kind
Yeah.
of want to touch on that as well, and just like a little before that, because I mean, you named your company Energy Hedge, back in 2015. What made you choose such a broad name when most companies were still, kind of doubling down and figuring out solar?
I didn't want to get cornered with just solar. I know that it's incentive backed with government tax credits or the possibility of having utility rebates. And I know sometimes when those things change or run out, that there could be some industry changes to the downside. And I also wanted to offer a buffet of different energies and solutions to my clients. So therefore, I stuck with that Energy Hedge name from the beginning because I saw it coming 10 years in advance.
That's amazing. You having that kind of foresight, I think, is what's allowed you to, be in the position you are today. Not only your company growing, but the industry growing almost, simultaneously side by side. And I kind of want to jump into that as well, because what was the moment you realized that just doing solar wasn't going to cut it anymore? Like, what kind of gave you that kind of
Well,
view?
there were two big steps. Actually, when I was managing that sales team where we were selling the residential solar projects in California, I saw that there was way too many people in this game. And
Mhm.
I thought, residential's it's too crowded right now. And fortunately, I met someone who gave me some bit of advice. He came from utility scale. He goes, commercial industrial is where it's at. So when I jumped into commercial industrial, I saw solar was great. It was amazing. It helps so many of my clients, but it can't help everybody. And there's other solutions out there. And then that's
Hmm.
why Energy Hedge is the best name that I could come up with, because you're hedging energy and you're not just hedging one form of energy. You could use that hedge through several different energies.
Exactly. And that's huge, right? Because part of the thing that we talked about, before the call was also that, you don't just sell the technology, you solve energy problems, right? So I guess that's what comes full circle, right? Like you're doing things that, other companies aren't maybe even thinking about, right? Like you're taking on the entire industry, the entire problem, your clients' entire, solution driving factors all at once. So kind of tell me about that product mix that you guys are doing today. Because, I mean, you're doing solar, hydrogen, syngas, EV, you have battery storage, which we'll get into later as well. But how do you decide what's right for the client?
We talk to the client about their pain points, which is usually their electric bill, and then we talk to them about the the positives and the limitations on their facility, whether that be the actual footprint of the facility or the construction of the roof and the weight it can take, or if the parking lot is available for solar canopy or what have you. And we also talk to them about their buying criteria, whether they want to pay cash or finance a project. And then we look at the project 10 different ways, and then we funnel the process down to exactly what they want. And having several different energy project or products is what helps us get to their goal.
That's huge. And walk us through some of the more popular ones that I think that you might have been seeing more trends of, or, things that are maybe up and coming that, might not be entirely mainstream just yet.
Hydrogen and syngas. Those are the two. They're liquid form. They you only need half an acre to a 40-foot trailer on site to be able to develop.
Wow.
Yeah, to be able to develop the energy there. And it works 24 hours a day. You know, it's got a 99% run rate. So it's not like something that breaks down 10, 15% of the time. You know, it's huge. It's a game changer. I was on the phone with a pretty large nationwide processing company earlier who was saying, "Look, Shawn, we've looked at solar 10 different ways, and it's only going to help us with roughly 5% of our bill, and it's because they're on a small footprint, and
Hmm.
solar will take up a larger footprint, and they run 3 shifts. They're open 24 hours a day with three
Fair
different
enough.
shifts." And I said, "I've got the solution or solutions for you. Let me talk to you." And they were blown away. They couldn't believe it. They automatically want to take a step two and get a site assessment done and start moving forward right away. You know, the issue with hydrogen in the past was that there weren't enough producers in the United States and it was expensive. And
Hmm.
now there's been some breakthroughs in the technology over the last few years, along with the fact that there's more producers and the cost has come down where it pencils for a lot of clients. It helps them save money on their bill right away from day one. And these companies, we're talking companies where their bills are anywhere from 2.4 million a year to $12 million a year for their electric bills.
Wow.
It's large industrial.
Fair enough. I mean, I love the example you're saying that, solar wasn't the right solution and, how you did it and what the solution that you came up with instead was, something that, most people don't even really think of. Has there any been more, situations or times that has happened? Is that becoming more and more frequent where
Oh,
you're
yeah.
finding something other than solar?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All the time. But the thing is, I still want to give them a solar bid. Solar can be the best answer many times. But now, look, I'm in California and I do business nationwide from New York to San Diego, from Seattle to Miami. We're actually doing a few projects in Southern Europe and in the Middle East right now too. But I'll tell you
Wow.
that oftentimes, solar is the answer, but when you're in California, most large energy users have already looked at solar. So
Hmm.
I attack that wider way. Why haven't you moved forward with solar? You're in California, we have the second highest electrical rates in the nation, next to Hawaii.
Hmm.
And they traditionally are very aggressive in their rate hikes every year. And then after COVID, with the inflationary period we've gone through, they're very, very aggressive. So in saying that, You've got three large utilities in California that are publicly traded, and their best interest is to raise rates because they want to get their share highs prior for their shareholders. So who are they going to
Of
take that
course.
on? The local heavy energy users, and the local heavy energy users do not have a way to shop monopoly until you met
Fair
me.
enough. That's huge. I mean, this is kind of off topic, I guess, but have you seen much of an influx in people looking for more sustainable energy solutions for the fact that it is sustainable, for the fact that it is green and easier on the environment, or is it mainly a financial thing?
Mainly financial. I will say with the new administration here in the States, it's all financial. There are some companies that still have sustainability goals, especially in blue states like California.
Hmm.
But I will tell you that most of the time it's financial. And that's why you got to structure the deal how the CFO wants it, right? So if the
Exactly.
CFO says, look, the board is always looking for a certain percentage of savings. They're always looking for a certain return and payback period for their investment, and they're looking for a certain percentage in their IRR. They'll pull the trigger all day. I structure the deal right around how he wants it.
And then apart from solar, then, how do you explain things like hydrogen and syngas to a client who's used to hearing about solar panels? Some of these companies are getting bombarded with offers every day, and you come up with a new solution that can be used on utility industrial scale. Is that explanation and education process any different?
Yeah, it's the same as solar was in the beginning. Meaning you
Hmm.
explain the process, you explain what the energy is, you explain the process, the type of machinery being used, the footprint on the facility itself, and so forth. But when they start to do their research and I educate them, they're finding out it's a better technology in many cases, especially when you have an area where solar can over only cover so much of their ground, or and they just have a huge bill, the gigantic bill that solar can't help them with.
Fair enough. And is that the biggest problem usually that you're stepping away from solar and looking at other options is when solar doesn't fit?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
See, most people are comfortable with solar, but here in California, I don't pitch solar, I pitch energy. And honestly,
Mm,
that's starting to take place nationwide. I'll tell you this, the Middle Eastern countries, they're hungry for hydrogen. They want hydrogen all day long. Hydrogen,
yeah.
syngas, they're all about it. If you read up on Oman, country of Oman, they want to be green hydrogen. 100% of their country ran on it.
Wow. And how did you get into that market? I mean, I know you talked a lot about networking and, getting in front of people, but, getting so national like that, it's not an easy task.
One of my associates here at the company, he just happened to know someone that's done business in the Middle East for years and a very strong business with the governments, and he can make introductions pretty quickly.
Wow, that's fantastic. And now I'm going to step a little bit more towards a different area because when we talked earlier, you mentioned cold storage, oil, gas, hospitals, manufacturing. These are all industries that you obviously work in and obviously have huge footprint. They need a ton of energy to run. Which of those industries, or if you could pick one, that'd be great. But if there's multiple that you're really seeing the biggest ROI for right now, which would they be?
Good question. I would say manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
Manufacturing in California and in the Northeast, because the way the utility structures their rates, they use heavy machinery and they use a certain amount of electricity at different parts of the day. So when their machines are running, they have high powered machines. They get charged a lot of money for
Mm-hmm.
that quick bust of energy called demand fees.
Mm-hmm.
Manufacturing really sees a great return. Also, and I'll go into another industry, cold storage is great. It's 24-hour a day, 7 days a week of freezing, refrigeration. And although they don't have the same demand fees because they're always using energy, it's not like the big machines of manufacturing where they turn on and off and turn on and off. This is just
Mm-hmm.
always freezing, always refrigeration. But it's just freezing 24 hours a day in a 200,000 square foot warehouse. You imagine how much energy they're using.
Oh, of course. And I mean, I think that kind of plays into some of the challenges that you're also facing too, because, well, correct me if I'm wrong, are you still working in residential or is it just commercial,
No
utility,
residential,
industrial?
just commercial and industrial.
So then what are some of the challenges that, maybe commercial clients and, industrial utility clients face that maybe residential and homeowners don't?
I mean, it's just it's look, you can have a business, let's just say manufacturing business in San Diego. Okay. Their bills, their electric bills are probably the second highest overhead expense for them every month besides payroll. So that's a challenge where you may have a homeowner where their bills anywhere from $120 a month to $500 a month, depending on if they have a big family, they have a swimming pool,
Hmm.
if they're near the ocean, if they're in the desert, what have you. Out here or anywhere really, the commercial businesses, they have a completely different rate structure and their costs are just out of control, especially
Hmm.
in states like California and in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut.
Fair enough. I mean, it is such a big area to really consider, right? I mean, you have so many more decisions, you have so many more people that are part of the process as well, and
Yes.
it's getting difficult to offset that. So, I mean, obviously the process is different. So, I guess this next question is kind of, a bit of a two-parter, but what kind of savings or returns are clients seeing? Is it like a 3 to 6 year ROI, 11 to 30% IRR? Is it,
Yeah, you're right on. You're right on, actually. It's
yeah?
usually, yeah, it's a double digit IRR, but it's usually 11 on the low end. You can get 30, 35 on the high end, depending on the company. And then for the payback period, it's usually about 3 to 6 years right now.
Wow, perfect. So I guess we nailed that right on the
Yeah,
nose.
you
We're gonna
nailed
have
it.
to.
You nailed it. Now, most companies, I would say, if they're credit grade, they love power purchase agreements where
Mhm.
a fund wants to own and operate renewable energy projects for commercial and industrial clients. They'll pay for all the equipment, they'll pay for the install, they'll operate and they'll maintain the equipment like it's like the client's new utility. And
Mhm.
the client doesn't have to pay out of pocket. They just pay a lower rate starting in year or the month one, all the way through year 15 or 20, whatever they agree upon on the term. And you can save 20% on your bill in month one doing that. And a lot of companies do that. However, a lot of companies, they have cash. They prefer to pay in cash or they like the investment. And they're like, look, we're going to pay cash. So they'll wait 3 to 5 years to get their money back. And then they're in the clear for, the next 15 years, 20 years.
Well, what's the split on that usually? Like, what companies are you seeing going with the one route opposed to with the cash route opposed to, the
Probably
financing?
70% of companies want a power purchase agreement and 30% pay cash.
Fair enough. That's
Yeah.
actually a little bit more interesting than I guess we thought, but it's interesting. It's just an interesting fact to kind of take note of. And I think that kind of applies to the next segment as well, because like we talked a little bit earlier, you're expanding into places like, Lebanon, Iraq, Southeast Asia. We talked a little bit how those opportunities came about, but how is that process different? For most of the listeners listening, I think we have around 70 to 80% North American listeners, maybe 10% in Australia. These are places that we don't really hear of too often, or an American, started company going into these kind of areas. So where does that experience kind of change in relation to, what people are used to here in the North America?
Are you talking about just my personal experience there and the process of working with them?
I think both process and also the community and how open people are to the different energy,
First of all, they're
opportunities.
very open to the different energies. Much more open than we are here. Yeah. The second thing is it's because they're in need of it. Their
Fair
infrastructure
enough.
isn't built as well as, let's just say Western Europe, North America, Northern Asia, things of that nature, Australia. They're not built as well, or they don't have enough water, for instance, to power some of this stuff. So they're really looking at like other forms of energy. And solar is great, but in the Middle East, it's not going to work. It can work, but it's really hot there. And solar doesn't work in the high heat as well as it
Hmm.
does in temperatures like 80 degrees, things of that nature. And then also, they have dust storms and things of that nature as well. So it covers the
Exactly.
panels. Hydrogen's a better technology. And so when they start to hear this, they start to research it, or they've seen hydrogen projects be very successful there, they want to jump in. our
Hmm.
infrastructure here is built different. We don't have the same challenges in terms of blackouts and brownouts and availability of electricity. So we're a little more slower to move. I think the people there are really, they want to save money, but it's really about the technology and having it run 24 hours a day and be reliable. Where here,
Hmm.
it's more about the cost savings.
Fair enough. It's like the peace of mind and the, knowledge that it's going to hold up with whatever you throw at it.
That's right.
Fair enough. And I mean, for someone that's listening, that's maybe trying to break into international projects, what would you tell them in terms of advice or, things to be wary of?
I would tell them if, one bit of advice is to start paying attention to the international market. You can find publications out there or become a part of an email list that sends you something once a month or once a week on certain projects that are being built out there or what have you. Start studying the players involved. And then two, I would say, the challenges would be in terms of just, you just got to really start networking, getting to know people, and people know people who know people who know people. So if you really
Mhm.
know your stuff and you're hungry enough, you can eventually meet the right people that can get you the introductions that you need.
That's huge. And I mean, as we're kind of on the topic of getting around, you said it yourself, like the old-fashioned marketing is still alive. I mean, maybe tell us the story of, a couple years back when you're in your truck and you see something fun on the side of the
I
road.
just
What'd you
did it
do?
2 months ago. Yeah, so look, here in California, all new builds have to have solar on the roof or in the parking lot.
Hmm.
All of them. It doesn't matter what kind of building. Okay. So you see a building going up. Let's say multifamily is getting big here in California. So you're starting to see 4-story, 5-story condo buildings, apartment buildings going up everywhere, right off the freeways.
Hmm.
So I see a company breaking ground. I see somebody grading some land. I see framing going up. I'll pull off the freeway. I've got my hard hat. I've got my safety vest. I've got my boots. So I'm in compliance with their safety measures. So when I walk on the lot, I just say, "Who's the man in charge? I need to talk to?" And they just port you to the man in charge, and he's usually in a trailer on site. And I go introduce myself. I go, "Look, I'm Shawn Young. I'm an energy provider. You probably need solar on this project, right? Do you have someone yet? If you do, give me a shot at it anyways. If you don't, I want a shot at this project. If this
Hmm.
project's not available to me, I want your future projects." And they appreciate it, man. It's old school. You just go up to people and shake their hand, and you're not talking over the internet, which the internet's great. You reach out to way more people, but there's a personal touch involved, and I can be old school in a way.
Exactly. I think that's the beauty of it too, right? I mean, you're seeing now you can hit so much more volume online, but like you said, the personal touch and actually being there in person is something that has left for many many years. I'm really happy that it's slowly coming back because you're getting bombarded by emails every day. You're seeing tons of different things online, but you also said that it's something that's really really important, and we kind of touched on it earlier. You said relationships are the only thing that gets you to sea level. And you said networking, networking, networking is the number one thing. What taught you that? Where'd that mindset actually come from? How do you build those
Experience,
relationships from
experience,
scratch?
experience, man. I was trying to go straight to the sea level for years, and they're nice guys, or some of them aren't so nice, but they're just like, get out of here, or you can't even get through to somebody. So I said, okay, who can get me to the sea level?
Hmm.
That's what I started studying. It's like a tree,
Fair
right?
enough.
You just can't get to the top of the tree. You have to have branches. So who's my branch to the sea level?
Fair enough. And I
Yeah.
mean, how do you balance that then? Like the old school approach, with, what your younger team is asking for, I guess. They want the content, the social media, right? Like where do you find that balance?
I'm learning to balance it now. I'm being less stubborn. I'm starting to be a little new world here. They finally talked me into really engaging in social media along with some online marketing and
Hmm. Of
also using AI. And I think that,
course.
I think AI is going to be a big breakthrough. Like everybody's saying it will, but I think that being able to apply, certain metrics when it comes to using the right social media with the right audience and also some email campaigns and so forth, that will balance things out. I will tell
Exactly.
you, getting in front of the developer, getting in front of the general contractor, getting in front of the architect is huge. Also,
Hmm.
Also, when it comes to retrofit projects, getting in front of mid-management a lot of times, well, they're more willing to talk to you and can make introductions to the C-level if you can't get to C.
Exactly.
It's huge. Belonging to certain networking groups and just going up to people and introducing yourself to everybody. Oh, look, I've been doing this since '08, so a lot of people already know me. So I'll get calls a lot, a couple times a week on new projects.
Fair enough.
But in saying that, the some of the reps that I have that are much younger than me are teaching me a lot, and those doors are starting to open now for us.
That's fantastic. That's good to hear. I like the fact that you're not going full, new school, and there's still a bit of still a bit more of like a classic touch to it, which, you can't buy. You can't buy that anywhere. So I really love it. And I think it's back to your conversation on AI. I think it's going to be massive. I mean, for myself and for some of the people I work with, half of our businesses are run by AI already.
Right.
Like there's tons of applications to it, and all that we can really do is sit and talk about it. We can educate, we can show, we can kind of explain to people what it is, and how it works. What the applications are. So it's massive and it's only getting bigger. And actually, speaking of that, I kind of want to talk politics just for a second with you, without getting too into it. But
Yeah.
what do the latest changes in the federal incentives mean for companies like yours?
Well, look, we were very fortunate that in the big beautiful bill that they didn't cut everything out like they originally wanted to by the end of this year, that we had a few years extension. So what that does is it puts pressure on us and it puts pressure on our clients to say, look, if you're ever going to do this, you need to do it now. You need to really start looking into it and drive through. So everybody's sprinting now. That's the change. Does it help? In a way, it does, because everybody's actually saying, okay, we can't kick this can down the road anymore. We need to make it happen now. In a way, it
Fair
does.
enough.
Right. I will tell you that a lot of these manufacturers, they'll probably start lowering their pricing at the same time to meet some of the demand as well. And I think that that's a
Mm,
good thing. Now, we're dealing with tariffs. So, how does that get involved? Right. So, it's a big
exactly.
pot of, it's like a pot of gumbo. It's just everything and anything's in it. And you've got to find your way and stir your way through this ocean. And I think that the biggest thing is that we got a few years extension on this stuff instead of the original kill at the end of this year, and that clients really need to move forward pretty quickly here.
Exactly. No, it is. It's a big conversation, right? Because you mentioned preparing for phase outs when we talked earlier, and there's a lot of, I want to say, gray area of understanding, because it is going to take a few years to be fully out, but I mean, you never know if at the end of those 3, 4 years, if it's actually going to be completely out. We never know what's
That's
going to
true
happen,
too.
right?
That's true too. Now, there's some bills that some of part of the bill says you have to start construction at a certain period. Some of the bill says you have to be in permitting. Some of the bill says the project has to be completed. Now, so there's a lot to this. But in saying that, you don't know what changes are going to come in a couple of years. Do you really want to kill a whole industry? Right? That's another thing.
Exactly.
And the other thing is that our commercial and industrial clients, at least here in California, they can't shop their utility. You're stuck. You're in a monopoly.
Exactly.
So what politician, either on the left or the right's really going to leave you in that situation? You know, I
Exactly.
mean, you wonder why costs here in California are so high. You can't shop it, man. It is what it is. You are stuck with that utility every month. Like you can shop your cable company, you can shop your internet company, you can shop your cell phone provider, but you can't shop your utility provider
Hmm.
now. And so if you want to shop, I'm your guy and I'll show you a better solution.
That's massive. I love that. And I think actually, while we're on that topic, for people who, are considering, going with you, how are you future proofing Energy Hedge?
By being able to offer different technologies, that's the biggest thing. Continuing to grow in all ways at all times. Whether it be
That's
different
massive.
territory markets. For instance, there was a past where you never thought you would see renewable energy in Texas, and now there's a lot of renewable energy in Texas. You know,
Mhm.
hydrogen
It's
works in
actually one of
most.
the biggest markets.
Yeah, hydrogen works in most states. Solar works in probably a third of the states. And it has to do
Mhm.
with the cost, the rate structure, things of that nature. But I've got solar projects in Florida right now, east of Orlando, that I never thought I would have projects in Florida ever. Georgia, South Carolina, those are states that I never thought I would see projects in that I do. So really opening new territories, offering different technologies, and then also working and also working faster, using AI on things like engineering, marketing, things of that
Hmm.
nature. You telling me AI either now or a year or two from now is not going to be able to come up with your blueprints for a project, single line drawings for a project within 10
They
minutes?
already can.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly. And then while we're kind of on the topic of, evolving, what do you see growing or changing for your business in the next, 3 to 5 years and for the industry as well?
I see just growth internationally, different territories here in the States, working maybe with new industries. Certain industries are starting to pop up. Data centers are huge right now. Data centers are
Hmm.
popping up everywhere. They're going to take a ton of energy. Hospitals, you can use waste to energy now, and you can use hospital waste to power the hydrogen or syngas station on your facility. So you're basically using waste, your own waste that goes to nothing that you have to pay someone to take. Now you're going to use that to power your own electric bill, those types of
Hmm.
things. New technologies rolling out, being more aggressive in our marketing efforts online, and just continuing to expand at different territories with different technologies is going to be how we're going to continue to grow.
Hmm.
Recruiting
That's
top
massive.
talent as well.
Of course, that'll be big anytime, right?
Yep.
And as we're kind of starting to like phase out slowly, I just want to kind of get into the looking back questions now. I mean, what's the biggest mistake that you see, I mean, like new solar or energy companies making right now?
They honestly, from a technology standpoint, I don't really see them going in the wrong direction. What I do see is the sales teams that don't help
Hmm.
themselves. I see engineers that are great, and maybe they start an energy company, whatever type of energy that they produce or design, but
Hmm.
the sales teams aren't that great. Why aren't they great? They don't ask the customer what they want.
Exactly.
They don't ask the customer what their pain points are. They like to tell folks what to do, and they don't never learn that company's culture.
Hmm.
I was dealing with a company that's in gaming here in California, casino gaming. And they go, you're the first person we've talked to in 5 years that has actually asked us what we need, how we like to do business, and how we want it done. And then you
Wow.
structured it around that. And that's what you do. If someone asks you to paint a picture, you don't paint a picture. You ask them what kind of picture they want you to paint.
Exactly.
So that's what I do. I
That's massive.
start with a blank canvas, and there's too many people in this industry that just go up to the client and say, "Here's your problem. This is how we're going to fix it." And I'll say, "What problem do you have, and what's your plan? If you don't have one, do you want me to help you? And how do we structure that plan to make your executive board happy?" And then now
Hmm.
you've got a guy on the inside that's ahead of this project that looked like a hero.
Exactly. And I mean, let me know what you think, but over here, maybe like a little bit more, on the East Coast, North America, we're seeing a lot of, and I want to say the word solar bros that's been thrown around a lot. You see everyone chasing commissions, you see everyone kind of chasing that next job, the next paycheck, whatever it is, because they're incentivized just to sell. They're not
Right.
incentivized, to solve and educate. Is that something that you're kind of getting towards and that you're seeing as well?
Oh, I've seen it since 2012.
Yeah.
It's just especially residential. A lot of solar bros, they just are run, 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 and it doesn't do the industry any favors. You really have to walk steady with your
Hmm.
head up and do your client right and run and play the long game, to run the marathon.
Hmm.
It's like if you've ever heard the or watched a cartoon of the turtle in the air, right?
Yep,
The
of
rabbit's always
course.
taking off running crazy, and the turtle's just very consistent, but the turtle wins in the end, and that's how you got to do it. You really have to meet your client's needs in a strong way, and I'm sure you'll get a lot of referrals out of that instead of just rushing and rushing and rushing.
That's fantastic. And you said something about a marathon, so I kind of want to go back to the beginning of yours when you were just starting it. What's one thing you wish you knew back in 2008?
I would say to be patient, and I would
Be the
say
turtle.
to l- to ask your client questions and listen to your client. Look at when you're talking, you're not selling.
Hmm.
Selling is listening, listening to what people want, and then figuring out a best way to deliver it for them. I wish I would
Hmm.
have known that then. I learned it pretty quick, but I didn't quite know it back in 2008.
That's fantastic advice. I think that's going to be one of the biggest takeaways for anyone maybe thinking of getting into the energy business, or honestly, any entrepreneur out there, right? Like you, as a service-based company, as a service-based business, your job is to really educate and understand what the company that you're working for, the person that you're working for, is after, what they need. And obviously listening, like you're saying, that's 90% of it. You can't solve the problem if you don't know what it is. I think that's a great piece of advice. And Sean, where can everybody go to find more about you and find out more about Energy Hedge?
EnergyHedgeGroup.com is our website. You can find everything you need there about us. We're going to be restructuring the website soon and adding a lot of other components to it, but that's the best way to find us right now.
That's fantastic. And any cool projects that you want to kind of tell us about before we end off here?
Yeah, we're working with Pepsi overseas in the Mid East. We're working with a couple of big, large freight carriers in the port of LA.
Hmm.
That is big for us. And we've got some projects going right now with a couple of hospitals and a couple of smaller sports arenas as well. There's a lot of great stuff going on, and it's exciting time right now.
It is very exciting. I'm excited to follow along and see what's the LinkedIn page that people could find you at as well.
Shawn Young, ShawnYoung, or Energy Hedge Group, either or.
That's fantastic. I think there's going to be a lot of great content on there as well. So everybody, please go check it out. There's a lot of very, very cool projects and innovation happening. So everybody, that was Shawn Young, founder of Energy Hedge Group, bringing 15 plus years of experience, multiple energy solutions, and a pretty refreshing, like no BS perspective on what clients actually want from the renewables industry. So, like he said, if you want to learn more, check out energyhedgegroup.com and stay tuned. We'll be sharing some short clips from this episode soon. And remember, solar might only be the entry point, but the future is in total energy strategy. And companies like Sean's are really leading the way. So, thank you very much, Sean. We really appreciate having you on.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course. And as always, everybody, take care and we'll see you next time.